You know, we're all trying to navigate this world where getting your point across, well, it isn't always easy, is it?
No, not at all.
Whether you're connecting with colleagues, maybe from different parts of the globe, or trying to really get the nuances of a subject that's shaped by all these diverse viewpoints.
Mm.
Or maybe you just have that urge to understand how everything fits together. Communicating effectively across cultures, it's not just nice to have anymore. It feels essential.
Absolutely essential. And that's exactly why we're doing this deep dive today. We're jumping into the really fascinating and honestly vital area of contextualizing our messages.
Contextualizing.
Yeah, think about it. How do you make something truly resonate with someone who sees the world through a completely different lens?
And our sort of guide for this exploration today is this really compelling piece called The Gospel in Every Tongue and Every Heart.
Right.
But, and this is important, don't let that title make you think this is only about religion. The principles we're pulling out here, they apply everywhere.
They really do.
Okay.
It's about cracking that code of connection, no matter the cultural landscape you're dealing with.
Yeah.
Our goal isn't, specifically theology today. It's to pull out those crucial insights from this source about how to bridge any cultural divide using communication.
Practical stuff.
Exactly. Practical takeaways, those aha moments that give you a clear path to connecting with others, maybe uncovering some surprising things along the way too.
Okay, so picture the world's cultures like these incredibly varied landscapes, right? Some feel familiar, others totally alien. Understanding the contours, the terrain of these landscapes is just key. One misstep, one misunderstanding.
And you've missed the connection, missed opportunity.
Totally. And the source material asks this fundamental question that really, really struck me. In a world that's just packed with so much cultural diversity, is any core message, whether it's spiritual or a business plan or just a personal belief, is it still relevant?
That's the big challenge, isn't it? And to really wrap our heads around it, we're going to cover some fascinating ground today. We'll start by defining what contextualization actually means, where the idea even comes from. Then we'll get down to brass tacks, practical strategies you can actually use.
Good.
And we'll also tackle a really critical distinction.
Yeah.
How do you adapt a message so it fits a culture without, fundamentally changing its core? That's the tightrope walk between contextualization and something called syncretism.
Ah, right, that balancing act. That sounds crucial.
It is. We'll also look at the indispensable roles played by language, customs, the everyday ways people do things, and even something as deep as worldview in this whole process.
Worldview, yeah. Foundational.
Definitely. And to make it really concrete, we'll even look at a classic example studied for centuries. The Apostle Paul's approach when he talked with the thinkers in ancient Athens.
Okay, I'm ready. Let's dive in. What exactly is this contextualization?
Well, first off, it's so much more than just swapping words, like finding the dictionary equivalent in another language and thinking you're done.
Right. It's not just simple translation.
Not at all. At its heart, it's about creating a genuine bridge. A bridge between a message which might be ancient or from a totally different culture, and how people in a new audience actually think and feel right now, today.
So it's not just translating the words.
It's translating the meaning for a specific cultural heart. Does that make sense?
It does. It's like taking a timeless story and retelling it so it speaks directly to the experiences, the hopes, maybe even the fears of the people listening now.
Precisely. And this isn't some brand new idea, The source material points out its roots go way, way back to the very beginnings of the early church.
Really?
Yeah, imagine those first followers engaging with all sorts of cultures, pagan beliefs, different philosophies.
That must have been incredibly challenging. Different languages, customs, ways of seeing reality.
Exactly. And out of those early struggles, this understanding grew. Any truly powerful message has a universal core, right?
Okay.
But to be heard, to be understood, it needs to be expressed in a way that feels relevant, that makes sense within the specific cultural framework of the audience.
So it requires, what? Humility, empathy.
The source really emphasizes that, yes, deep humility and genuine empathy are key.
So it's not about, dumbing down the message or changing its essence.
Not at all. The aim of cultural adaptation, as the source describes it, is actually to amplify the message's power, not water down its truth.
Not dilute, got it.
And when you look at how this works practically, a few key things pop up, like cultural immersion.
Okay, what's that involve?
Really embedding yourself, living among the people, learning the language, getting a visceral feel for how they see the world.
Like becoming a temporary local, trying to see through their eyes.
Exactly that. Then there's relational building, earning real trust, going beyond just, superficial interactions.
Building relationships.
Crucial. And contextual communication itself, using symbols, stories, everyday language, idioms that actually resonate in that specific community.
Using their language, their way of storytelling.
Yes. And finally, collaborative learning, recognizing it's not a one-way street.
So it's a dialogue.
It's a two-way street. Both the messenger and the listeners learn from each other, enriching understanding on both sides.
The source uses this great analogy, building a bridge, not with concrete, but with shared stories, mutual respect, common hope.
That's a powerful image, isn't it?
It really is. Completely different from just, handing out leaflets and expecting people to get it.
Right. And the source gives this example, crafting narratives that weave, say, the parables of Jesus with existing local legends in a village where storytelling is the main way values get passed down.
So weaving it into their existing cultural fabric.
That's contextual communication working really well.
And it strikes me, while the source focuses here, these principles are so much broader. Think about education.
Definitely.
Tailoring teaching for diverse students. Or business.
Yeah.
International negotiations. Understanding those cultural nuances can make or break a deal.
Absolutely. Or even just personal relationships.
Yeah. The core lesson is universal. Meet people where they are with deep respect for their context.
Exactly. So let's dig a bit deeper now into what the source calls the heartbeat of cultural context. What are those core elements that make this connection really work?
Okay, sounds good.
The source stresses that real contextualization goes way beyond just the surface words. It's about speaking directly to people's lived experiences, their core values, the histories that shaped them.
Tapping into what truly matters to them, fundamentally.
Their deepest concerns, their joys, their shared story.
Right.
And cultural immersion is highlighted again as this sort of living classroom.
A living classroom, I like that.
It's where you learn the unspoken norms, the deep values, not from books, but by listening, embracing traditions, engaging in real, heartfelt dialogue.
Honoring their identity, building that mutual respect.
Precisely. It really makes you think of that phrase, seek first to understand.
And to be understood.
Yeah. And the source mentions how the early disciples seem to have this knack for it, this nuanced approach, sharing their message across wildly different cultures, religious traditions, meeting people in their struggles, their triumphs. It wasn't one size fits all.
So where does the theological part, the core beliefs, fit in here?
Well, the source points to this critical intersection. The universal promise of the message, its potential to reach anyone, has its most profound impact when it's communicated in a way that resonates within that specific cultural setting.
Okay.
That's where using local symbols, familiar stories, everyday idioms become so powerful. They act like bridges, connecting the universal truth to the specific lived reality of that community.
That makes total sense. The message becomes less abstract, more real, more relevant to their lives. Okay, now let's talk about something the source calls the deep roots of cultural identity. Sounds important.
It really is. The source explains how our cultures act like these powerful, often invisible forces, shaping how we even perceive reality. They guide everything, our daily interactions, how we express ourselves, how we interpret the world. Culture isn't just what we do, it's how we see.
Like our cultural background is the operating system for our brain, influencing how we process everything.
That's a great way to put it. The source uses this sensory detail, stepping onto foreign soil, the unfamiliar smells, sounds.
Yeah.
That's just a hint of the deeper cultural differences. It shows how cultures define things like respect, honor, what's offensive, even a smile.
Oh, definitely. A friendly smile here could be seen as insincere or weak somewhere else.
Exactly. And the source digs into complex ideas like honor. It contrasts collectivist societies where your honor is tied up with your family, your community.
Right.
With individualistic cultures where honor is more personal, linked to your own achievements. And this difference, the source says, massively affects how people understand concepts like sin and redemption.
So in a collectivist culture, one person's mistake brings shame on everyone. That totally changes how you'd see sin as just a personal failing.
Precisely. The source calls it the burden of cultural baggage. That words like sin, redemption, heaven, hell carry.
Cultural baggage.
These words aren't empty boxes. They're loaded with culturally specific meanings, history, emotion. The challenge is unpacking them carefully and reassembling the meaning in a way that's sensitive, resonates, and is accurate.
It sounds like anyone doing cross-cultural work, especially missionaries, needs to be a really skilled cultural navigator?
Absolutely. They're not just sharing belief, they're trying to communicate across these deep cultural lenses that shape how people see everything.
Yeah.
The source gives this example, explaining sin in a community where honor is communal. Instead of focusing only on individual error, maybe you emphasize the shared wounds. A wrong action causes the whole group. The impact on collective honor.
That makes so much sense. It grounds an abstract idea in their real, shared, deeply felt experience.
And the source loops back to those practical strategies. Immersion, building relationships, adapting concepts to local idioms, that crucial two-way dialogue. It's all about respecting those cultural lenses.
Okay, we're really getting a sense of how deep culture runs. Now, the source moves to why culture matters in mission. Seems like we've touched on this, but I bet there's more.
You're right. The source uses this really great analogy. Imagine your voice trying to carry across a huge, unfamiliar valley.
Okay.
That valley is the cultural divide. Culture filters the message. It's not just how loud you speak, it's the valley's acoustics, the terrain, that decides if you're heard and understood.
So it's the environment the message enters, not just the message itself.
Exactly. Culture is that often unseen valley: history, traditions, values, and crucially, worldview. This valley determines what resonates, what gets misunderstood, what just gets ignored.
And at the heart of that valley is worldview.
Yes, worldview covers our most basic beliefs about morality, spirituality, social order.
Yeah.
The source contrasts Western individualism, personal salvation, self-reliance,
Right.
with collectivist cultures, where group well-being, harmony, shared responsibility are paramount.
And that basic difference in worldview profoundly impacts how any message is received.
Absolutely. The source gives the example of a salvation message focused only on individual transformation. In a collectivist culture, that might seem ineffective, maybe even selfish, like it ignores the group's needs.
It's like offering one person a life raft when their whole family is drowning doesn't address the main problem.
Powerful image. And the source points to history mission efforts that failed, sometimes badly, by ignoring cultural context, especially during the colonial era. Sometimes the message got tangled up with Western values, leading to superficial conversions, not real heart change.
So the essence got lost in cultural translation, not just language.
Exactly. The source hammers this home. Authentic cross-cultural communication, and this goes way beyond missions, demands respectful, deep, ongoing cultural engagement.
So back to those key strategies.
Yes. Immersion, becoming a student of the culture, dialogical engagement, real two-way conversations, and contextualizing the message, aligning it with the cultural fabric.
And this applies broadly, right?
Right.
Business, education, international relations.
Invaluable lessons for a globalized world. Understanding the cultural valley isn't just polite, it's fundamental for effective communication.
Okay, now this is critical. Contextualization versus syncretism. Sounds like a tricky line to walk.
It is. The source uses another great analogy. A tightrope over a chasm. One side is irrelevance, your message doesn't connect. The other side is syncretism. You compromise the core message trying to fit in.
And contextualization is the skillful walk in the middle.
Right. Contextualization makes the message understandable within the culture. Syncretism changes the message itself.
Okay, define them a bit more.
Contextualization, the source says, is intentionally presenting your core message, the gospel, in this case using local language, imagery, customs that resonate. Finding common ground.
Like reframing something familiar so a new idea clicks.
Exactly. Syncretism, though, is blending your core truths with elements from other beliefs that fundamentally contradict those truths.
Like mixing medicine with something that cancels it out or worse, makes it harmful.
That's a good way to think about it.
So what does healthy contextualization look like? Examples.
Well, it means speaking the local language fluently.
Yeah.
Idioms, metaphors, storytelling styles. Engaging with people's lived experiences. Respecting cultural expressions, art, music, traditions, and connecting the message to them.
And the dangers of syncretism.
Altering core, non-negotiable doctrines, merging incompatible beliefs, losing the message's transformative power. It gets watered down, compromised, loses its impact.
So how do you navigate this? Stay on the tightrope. Principles.
Key strategies from the source. First, know your non-negotiables, the absolute core truths. Second, embrace cultural nuance. See how local ways might align with, not contradict, those truths. Third, foster mutual dialogue, real two-way conversation. Fourth, humility and continuous learning. It's an ongoing process. And finally, evaluate constantly. Is the core message still clear, undiluted, impactful?
A continuous cycle. Learn, adapt, check, adapt again.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The source gives examples, maybe emphasizing communal redemption in a community-focused culture. Or stressing personal transformation, but linking it clearly to community well-being in an individualistic one. Finding relevant angles without changing the core.
Okay, that distinction is super important. Now, a fascinating example, a masterclass in context. Paul's example in Athens, Act 17. I remember the story. Powerful cross-cultural communication.
It's a landmark example, truly. The source sets the scene. Athens, this incredible hub of ideas, philosophy, debate.
We're a melting pot.
Exactly. And Paul arrives, but he doesn't just denounce everything. He finds this incredibly insightful entry point that altar to an unknown God.
Ah, yes, he used what was already there.
Masterful. Building a bridge from their existing spiritual awareness. The source stresses his approach was rooted in empathy, keen observation. He started with the familiar, affirmed their context.
What you worship as unknown, this I proclaim to you. Respectful yet inviting.
Exactly. Not confrontational. A continuation of their spiritual quest.
So what were the underlying principles?
The source breaks it down. Cultural sensitivity, understanding their values, intellect, relational engagement connecting to their existing spiritual surge, and transformative communication, reframing God in a way that was relevant within their philosophical framework.
The total opposite of cultural imperialism, just imposing your beliefs.
Absolutely. And the source pulls out timeless applications for us today. Listen before you speak. Immerse yourself first. Build bridges. Don't erect barriers. Find common ground. And stay true to core principles. Balance adaptation with essential truths.
So practical, still relevant now. Amazing.
Okay, let's move to the building blocks of understanding. Language, customs, and worldview. Sounds foundational.
They really are the pillars for effective contextualization. Language, the source says, is way more than just exchanging info. It's the vessel carrying a culture's thoughts, emotions, history, worldview, packed with nuance, metaphors.
Like the DNA of how a culture expresses itself.
Good way to put it. Then customs, the living ritual structuring daily life, expressing collective values. Even eye contact means different things in different places. All those unspoken rules and traditions that shape interactions.
Right. And finally, worldview. As we said, the fundamental lens for interpreting life beliefs about existence, morality, reality, purpose.
So to truly understand and communicate, you need insight into how they speak, how they live daily, and how they fundamentally see the world.
Absolutely. The source shows how they're interwoven. Someone communicating needs to learn the language for deeper expression, participate in customs to grasp community bonds, and delve into worldview to frame the message so it resonates fundamentally. It's like a complex puzzle needing all three types of pieces.
Makes sense. Let's break them down more. First, language as the gateway, unlocking the cultural code.
Right. The source stresses moving beyond word-for-word translation. You need the idioms, those colorful phrases packed with cultural meaning. The metaphor is how abstract ideas get linked to tangible cultural experiences.
Like understanding the poetry within the language, not just the grammar.
Exactly. And the source points out, just trying to learn the language, even basics, shows huge respect, builds trust, shows you value their way of life.
A powerful sign of humility, wanting to connect deeper.
Precisely. And it's about capturing the full context, tone shifts, proverbs, unspoken subtext. Understanding these nuances makes your communication much more relevant, aligned with their cultural narratives.
Not just the right words, but their deeper meaning, set in the right cultural rhythm. Okay, second block. Embracing the rhythm of life, customs and traditions.
The source calls customs the living expressions of a community's soul. They shape behavior, provide the framework for connection, carrying the weight of history and identity.
The established way things are done, often unstated but powerful.
Right. And the best way to grasp their significance, active, respectful participation. Joining in festivals, observing rituals, even daily practices gives you firsthand insight.
Learning by doing, by immersing in their daily flow.
Exactly. And customs offer rich symbols and narratives. If you can connect your message to something already meaningful in their customs, it's much more likely to resonate.
Like speaking their symbolic language.
Yes. And it should be a two-way street, mutual learning, respect. Approaching with openness lets you gain insight and builds relationships based on empathy.
More than just watching, engaging, showing interest, valuing their ways. Okay, third block. Worldview and its transformative power.
Worldview, that foundational framework for interpreting existence. The source says it's shaped by history, philosophy, spiritual dimensions. It's the lens for perceiving reality.
The core beliefs coloring everything.
Right. And the source highlights the transformative power of presenting ideas within a compatible worldview. like connecting God as creator to a community that already reviews nature.
Finding those existing threads in their belief system to weave into.
Precisely. Crafting this adaptive dialogue involves listening and learning about their worldview, identifying common ground, and framing new ideas in familiar, meaningful terms that resonate within their existing view.
Fostering natural understanding, not demanding a radical shift.
Exactly. Understanding their picture of reality first, then showing how new info might fit, maybe offer a deeper perspective within their frame. Now, this leads perfectly into cultural anthropology and the art of understanding.
Ah, the academic discipline behind this.
Yes, cultural anthropology gives us the tools for interpreting culture with nuance and respect. It introduces two key concepts: ethnocentrism and cultural relativism.
Ethnocentrism, viewing others through your own cultural lens, right? Judging them by your standards.
Exactly. Often leading to judgment, misunderstanding, feeling your way is the right way. The source lists consequences. Misinterpretation, cultural superiority, communication barriers. Think of a Westerner misreading lack of eye contact in Japan, or early missionaries imposing Western customs unintentionally.
The danger of assuming your norms are universal.
Right? The antidote, cultural relativism. Trying to understand a culture on its own terms, without imposing outside judgments. Considering their history, the function of practices within their system, their values.
Actively stepping outside your frame, seeing through their eyes, understanding from their context.
Yes, this fosters sensitivity, stronger relationships, adaptability. Examples: respecting traditional healing, adapting communication for collectivist values.
But the source notes attention here, balancing relativism with universal ethics.
Crucial point. Relativism aids understanding, but doesn't mean all practices are ethically equal. The source stresses respectful dialogue within their framework to work towards ethical progress, not just imposing external standards, a delicate balance.
Understanding the why while holding core ethics and engaging in dialogue. Okay, now diving deeper, the power of worldview analysis.
The source reiterates, understanding worldview is essential for meaningful communication, and it introduces a helpful framework, the three worlds view.
God-centered, spirit-centered, and human-centered.
Exactly. God-centered, supreme being, divine law, moral order. Spirit-centered, reality interwoven with supernatural forces. Spirits. Human-centered, prioritizes human reason, individualism, achievement.
Different lenses for interpreting reality and our place in it.
Precisely. And the source gives examples and implications for each. God-centered, appeal to divine authority, morals. Spirit-centered, acknowledge the supernatural, address spiritual concerns. Human-centered, engage through reason, evidence, personal meaning.
Like a map of belief systems to tailor your approach.
Right. The goal is adaptation without compromise. Find common ground while staying true to your core message. Worldview analysis helps connect with minds and hearts across diverse contexts.
Understanding their fundamental view before communicating anything new makes sense. Now, bringing in communication theory, the art of connection. Communication theory and cross-cultural engagement.
Yes, communication is more than words. It's bridging minds and worldviews. The source brings in key models: the transmission model, encoding, sending, decoding, potential noise distorting meaning.
The basic sender-receiver model, messages get lost.
Right. Then the interaction model adds feedback and adaptation. Communication is a dynamic exchange, not one way.
Listening to the response, adjusting.
Exactly. Then the cultural context model distinguishes high-context cultures, meaning often implicit, nonverbal, relational, versus low-context cultures, communication more direct, explicit, verbal.
Critical difference, how much is unsaid.
Very. And finally, the narrative paradigm emphasizes storytelling as a universal connector. We're wired for stories.
Stories cross cultures, connect emotionally.
Right. The source explains each model's relevance to cross-cultural challenges with examples. Key takeaways: watch for noise, seek feedback, adapt your style, use stories, build relationships first.
A valuable toolkit of strategies for different cultural landscapes. Okay, now bridging the gap. More than good intentions suggest goodwill isn't enough.
Absolutely right. Effective engagement requires transformation in perspective, posture, practice, seeing through their eyes, approaching with humility, actively adapting.
A conscious, ongoing effort, not just hoping it works out.
Exactly. The source details 9 practical strategies: immersive learning, with it, cultural mentors, learn from insiders, active listening observation, storytelling, building trust relationships, research preparation, language acquisition, patience, persistence, reflect, adapt.
All actionable steps, highlights the commitment needed. Now, a more reflective section, a symphony of faith and culture. The art of contextualizing the gospel.
Yes, using images, African market, Japanese tea ceremony, Andean festival to show faith embedded in culture. Contextualization here means speaking truth in the heart's language, using relevant symbols, building bridges, not walls.
Finding authentic connections between the message and existing cultural expressions, art, music, traditions.
Precisely. It highlights successes, like Paul, with different audiences, versus negative impacts of insensitive approaches, and reiterates 6 key strategies: immersion, listening, mentors, storytelling, art, music, humility, flexibility.
Back to fundamentals. Understanding, respect, continuous adaptation. Finally, the conclusion. The ongoing journey. A call to cultural sensitivity.
Using images of diverse worship worldwide to show the message's global reach. It stresses contextualization isn't a one-off task. It's ongoing because culture is dynamic, always changing.
A lifelong learning curve.
Exactly. 3 dimensions for this journey: understanding worldviews, engaging with cultural forms, symbols, long-term engagement, adaptation. It directly challenges our own assumptions, the danger of ethnocentrism, reminding us the core message isn't tied to one culture.
And offers ways to overcome ethnocentrism, like promoting local leadership, recognizing diverse, valid expressions of faith.
Absolutely. Emphasizes communicating effectively by speaking to deep cultural values, engaging with local art, music, stories. The conclusion ties it all together. The goal is a message understood as good news everywhere, meaning continual learning, humility, listening.
So wrapping up our deep dive, it's crystal clear. Communicating across cultures isn't just about translating words. It demands deep understanding of context, staying aware of that line between adapting and compromising, and recognizing the roles of language, customs, worldview. And it's not static, it's an ongoing journey.
Precisely. We really aim to give you a concentrated dose of insight today, a shortcut to well-informed on these crucial nuances, drawing from the gospel in every tongue and every heart, but showing how widely applicable these ideas are.
Definitely. And as you, our listeners, navigate your own interactions, maybe prepping for that big international meeting or digging into a global field, or just connecting with someone different, maybe take a moment, reflect on your own style. What assumptions might you be making unconsciously? Considering what we've talked about today, what's just one assumption you might reconsider next time you communicate across a cultural background? Often, it's those small shifts in perspective that make a world of difference in truly connecting.